Wonderful to have you all here. And thanks again for investing your time and being with us as we start. And I wanted to follow on from yesterday. Obviously, yesterday I was looking very much at the bigger picture of things. And so today I sort of wanted to drill down a little bit into one of the key points I mentioned. And today what I wanted to look at is this little saying that sort of stuck my mind that says, there's a lovely story in the Bible where somebody was told he's been weighed in the scales and found wanting. And that's one of those sort of idioms that's stuck in the English language, being weighed in the scales. And I wanted to look at how are you, if we were to go and look at yourself personally over this period, how do you find yourself when we were to look at those scales nicely balanced there? If you were to take a moment, in fact, my encouragement to you now is to take a moment and assess how have you spent or invested the time you've already had at home. So maybe get a pen and paper and sort of just jot down some notes. Maybe you've painted a room. I know that Kerry and I put together a vegetable garden, put together a couple of vegetable gardens. We're doing our accounts and stuff like that. But if you were to have a look at what you've done, how have you spent this, if you like, enforced time at home? So make a little note down of all the things that you've done. So have a look at all the stuff that you've got down. And I really do encourage you to actually write these down. Make a note of where have you done it? And for some people, you might have spent time, invested time. Sort of spent time is just like, it's gone. But invested time, you're going to get a return on that in some way. Great. Having done that, one of the things I really want to encourage you is this, that people will look back. I said to you last time, this too will pass. This too will pass. And people will look back on this month plus. I don't know how long it's going to be, but it's going to be a month plus. And they're going to bemoan how little they actually did with it. If you think about it, it's almost a dream come true for a lot of people. A month at home, for many people paid, and unrestricted. It's not like your competition is roaring ahead of you or anything like that. You're actually able to spend the month at home doing what you want to do. And so when you start to consider that, when you start to look at that, are you using it well? Or are you going to look back at it and go, oh, I wish I had done something different? One of the best ways to know whether you're using it well is to look at your routine over the last, of what we're in day 6 now of our lockdown. What's your routine been? Do you have one? We're getting to that point where the novelty of being at home is going to start to wear off for a lot of people. And then, of course, you risk going on that slippery slope. Like if you don't have to get up early in the morning, well, why would you? And if you don't have to wash your dishes because no one's going to come around and see it's a mess, why would you? And so there's this tendency to start to allow yourself to drop your own standards. And that's reflected very often in the routine that we have. Now, why is this tendency? For a lot of people, they've often said to me, it varies, for various situations, not like this one, but similar to it, where they've had an opportunity to do something and they haven't met their own standard. They've been given an opportunity and they've gone, oh, if I had that, I would do this. And then they get there and they don't do it. And there's lots of different reasons. So one of the reasons why people might not have put in place a routine is because there's no end in sight. And when you don't have an end in sight, it's like not having a clear vision. There's nothing pulling you forward. So we lose momentum. When there's no end goal, we're a little bit like the hamster in the wheel. And after a while, you begin to say to yourself, well, why am I keep running like this? So what's your end goal? I really do encourage you to think about setting some goals for yourself, whether they're mini goals, whether they're big goals. And maybe you're going to learn to play a musical instrument. Maybe you're going to learn a language. Maybe you are going to connect meaningfully rather than just superficially with people who matter to you. Maybe you're going to write a handwritten note to some key people in your life. Once again, how will you invest this time to deepen your relationships, to deepen your knowledge, your skill, your experience? One of the best definitions I've ever heard of success is that success is the pursuit of a worthwhile goal. And Earl Nightingale was the first person I heard say that. And there's a lovely story of a person climbing to the top of the hill, and it was from a movie, and the movie slipped my mind at the moment. But there was the wise old man that you have, and sort of his apprentice, and he kept talking about, oh, at the top of the hill, we're going to have a look, you know, that's the thing. And this guy was so super excited, and they're climbing this mountain, and he's so chirpy and chatty, this young apprentice, and they're climbing up the hill, and he's so excited to see what's going to be at the top of the hill. And they get to the top of the hill, and he's in this really good mood, and there's this beautiful view, and the guy says, so where is it? And the wise old man looks around and goes, oh, and he bends down and picks up a brick and goes, here it is. He goes, what do you mean I walked all the way up here to see that? And the lesson that he was trying to teach him is that the reality is, quite often for many of us, is not actually the goal that matters. What it is, it's the pursuit of something we believe to be worthwhile. You look at kids coming up to Christmas. They're so excited. They can't wait. They're talking about it all the time. They're leaping up early in the morning. They're rushing in there. And a kid in the build-up towards Christmas and at the end of Christmas Day, they're not the same. You know, so you've achieved the goal. And one of the key things for humanity is that we need to have a goal. We need to be striving towards something that we deem to be meaningful. So in this time that you have now, one of my key things is, please set yourself some goals so that you're not going to look back on this time and go, I wish I did this. I wish I did that. And whether those goals are small, medium, large, it doesn't actually matter. One of the people that I connect with and talk to quite a bit said she's going to be writing a book at this time. It's the perfect time for her to do that. It's a nice big goal for her. What's your goal? Is it meaningful? Will it give you the get up and go? Will it help you to get out of bed in the morning? One of the expressions that I remember from many, many years ago is this one over here. It says, habits maketh a man. Habits maketh a man. And very, very old English, but it's something that's so true. When I went to look up that quote, I saw this lovely picture over here. It says, attitude makes habit, habit makes character, and character makes the man. It's a nice play on what I talked about last time. Oh, I've got a question come through from Mariah saying, so what are our goals? So that's a fabulous question, something I'd love to discuss. So some of the goals that we've got is to, in this short period of time, is to look at how we can help as many businesses as possible with all the things that we have at our disposal. And for us, putting this on was one of those things. There's also a very great quote, which I'm about to lead on to, which from Theodore Roosevelt says, do what you can with what you've got where you are right now. And here we are locked up at home, and I'm thinking to ourselves, well, what have we got that we can do something with right now to help people that we know are struggling? And one of the things we've got is the skill set and the equipment to be able to transfer information that can be useful to people, and doing it in a way that's going to help people to make a difference, make a positive difference in their life. So we've got our Zoom cap to 100 at the moment. That's the plan that we're on. When we get to that 100, then we'll have to look at a new plan. So if I'm adding enough value and enough people come on, that's a good indication that it's a worthwhile goal. So I hope that that helps with your question there, and just gives you a little insight into one of the goals that we've got. Now, you'll see the name of their Will Durant, and there's a quote that's often given to Aristotle, one of my favorite quotes of all time. It says, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is an act, is not an act, but a habit. The reason it's attributed to Aristotle is because Will Durant was actually writing and reflecting on his thoughts on Aristotle's works, and it was actually, those are his words. So Will Durant, in looking at Aristotle, said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, but a habit. So if we come back down to these habits that maketh the person, what habits have you got? There's an excellent talk that many of you will have seen with one of the heads of the Navy SEALs. And he talks about getting up every day and making your bed. If it's not one that you've seen, I really encourage you, if you type making your bed into Google, it was a talk given at the Texas University. Really encourage you to have a look at that. The big thing is this: Are you doing what you can do with what you've got where you are right now? Are you doing with what you can do with what you've got where you are right now? So a really good question that's just come through. It says, what are some practical ways to build good habits? For me, that's a fabulous question. Thank you for asking that. One of the best ways of building habits, when I've looked for ways to do it, is BJ Fogg. He wrote an excellent book called Tiny Habits. And if you haven't read it, I really do encourage you to read it. But one of the greatest things that I found out of the work that he's done is this little scale over here. So he created this. It's called the behavioral model. And what he says is that in order for us to have a good habit, that we need three things. Okay, we need three things. The first thing we need is the motivation to do it. Oh, good. So Ruben's just come through and said that William McRaven, U.S. Admiral. So if those of you who want to go and watch that speech that I said, if you type in William McRaven, thank you, Ruben. That's really great. So he's the U.S. Navy Admiral. So when we start to look at this over here around how do we do it, BJ Fogg studied people for a long time, and what he discovered is that you need these three factors. So the first thing, you need to want to do it. Then you need to have the ability to do it. And then you need this thing he calls a trigger. So the example he often gives is if a telephone rings, so your phone rings and you do not answer it, why not? And typically the reasons why you might not answer the phone fall into two camps. Either you have a look at the phone and go, I don't want to speak to that person. Okay, lack of motivation. I don't want to talk to them. That's a deliberate act. Or I was in the shower and I didn't hear it ring, or I'm currently talking to somebody, so I can't answer it because that would be rude. So that's a lack of ability. I don't have the ability to do it because I'm doing something else. Okay, so that's ability and motivation. I trust that gets out. So another quick examples. If you are, then just about a trigger, should we? So if you're at a traffic light and it turns green, obviously that's the trigger to go forward. In the morning when you set your alarm clock and it makes a noise, that's the trigger to get up. When we start talking about ability and motivation and ability, what he found out was this, that if you want to do something, the more you want to do it, the easier it's going to be to actually do it. And the more abilities you have to do it, the easier it is going to be to do it. Okay, so the more motivation we have and the more ability we have, the easier something is for us to do. So when you look at this over here, when you've got low motivation and low ability, it's going to be a lot more difficult to do something and form a habit. Let's take a classic one for this time that we're in at the moment, getting up on time. So if we want to make sure that we get up on time, one of the things we need to be doing is, for argument's sake, setting an alarm. So there's a lot more involved in it. Make sure you've got to go to bed on time. Make sure you get a good night's sleep. And make sure you're not looking at screens just before you jump into bed, because that's not a good way to get to sleep. Okay? But in that then said, when you wake up in the morning, if the alarm is right next to your bed and it goes off, you hit the alarm. Now, there's an option there to raise your hands. How many of you here hit the alarm when it goes off in the morning? So a quick raise of hands on that. How many of you do that? Okay, I've got, so my little buzzer's going crazy. So we've got well over half of the people hit the alarm when it goes off in the morning. Okay. The reason is because it's easy to do. It must be within arm's reach. One of the key things you can do, of course, is that you can put the alarm on the other side of the room. So you actually have to get up to turn it off. The trigger then is not to then go and fall back into bed again, obviously. There is, of course, that little alarm that people have where it goes off and it bounces around the room. So you actually have to chase it. One of my favorite alarms is on your phone, and it gets progressively louder, and you have to do a mathematical equation to unlock your phone. So it means your brain actually has to start functioning, which means you're less inclined to go to bed. You see, all of those are triggers that are on the other side of this dotted line. Any triggers that you can put on the other side of the dotted line will work for you. So when you talk about how do I create a habit, know what you want to do, make sure you've got the ability to do it, and then put a trigger in place to help you do that. And triggers don't need to be complicated. I like to watch birds, and feeding. And so I have gone and put the bird feeder right in front of the kitchen window. So when I arrive in the morning, the first thing I see when I look out the window is the empty bird feeder. That's my trigger to go fill it up. It's a very easy thing to do. Look to put triggers in your life. And I wanted to wrap up with this little thing over here. One of the greatest things I saw, just picking up on that attitude thing. It's a quote by Charles Swindoll. He said, the longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude to me is more important than the facts. It is more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failure, than successes, than what other people think or say or do. It is more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. It will make or break a company, a church, a home. The remarkable thing is we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we'll embrace for that day. We cannot change our past. We cannot change the fact that people will act in a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is play on the one string we have, and that is our attitude. I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And so it is with you. We are in charge of our attitudes. As you start to look at this day that you've got before you, please, with all that's going on around you, choose to look for the best in the day. Choose to look for the best in yourself. Choose to look for the best in others. And what I'd like to do for the next coming days is we'll be looking for the next 3 days, so then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we're going to be looking at the 15 things business owners can do during lockdown. Now, I've got will be based off a blog that I wrote, and it's specifically targeted to business owners. However, and there's a lot of this of the tips that I will give in there that are applicable to everyday life. Just during this time, I'm acutely aware that for business owners, not having an income and still having to pay things like rent and salaries and things like that is going to be really challenging. And so what we've gone and done is put together 15 things that business owners can do that will make a difference. Really look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow. As always, any thoughts, questions, ideas, suggestions, please do email me, mike@thinkrite.co.nz, or jump onto our website. We've got a whole lot of resources on there, the blog I mentioned and some other things. And I do look forward to catching up with you guys again tomorrow at the same time. Go and enjoy your time, go and enjoy the day, and go and make a difference, a positive difference in somebody else's life out there. Thanks ever so much, everybody, and really do look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.